So my first question is to you, Pascal. You mentioned in your talk that the approach you were looking at was kind of from an enterprise perspective. But would you say, if at all, would it look different if it was from sort of a startup perspective, so a smaller?
We have hoped you don't have the legacy systems, but from a general principle, I think building up the experience layer and having that event bus with those business events is definitely the principle which I would implement if I were to start it.
So it works, but with sort of slight difference.
Yeah, because if you look at what made Google is actually they care about data and they stored everything and kept everything. Even they didn't know what the value was of that data, they just kept the data and it was quite business related. And then they started building services on top of that data, and that's actually how we have now Google Maps and other services which we just raised out of it. So I think data is so important that I would definitely focus on those business events, capture it, store it, and later time you can always use it from analytics point of view or whatever.
My view on it kind of depends on the context of your business. I think for what you were describing, if you're building a platform where you're enabling others to create something on top of it, and you're enabling that kind of creativity as a layer at that very top level, then yeah, the structure you're providing makes a huge amount of sense. But there are a lot of contexts, I think, in a startup where that might not be the case. But for a platform startup, absolutely.
Yeah, but if you have in gaming, I think there makes also a lot of sense to even capture certain events. Even you don't know they're important, they might actually be important from an operational perspective because it will help you to understand where is the onboarding, where do people stop using it, and actually provide you some kind of a free platform from an analytics point of view.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not only about creating that new business value, it might also help you to retrospective look at what changed in those events to capture actually the onboarding, when are people leaving, etc. So I think it's dual purpose there.
Yeah, I mean, when we were building our analytics stack, obviously we were really scrappy, so I think that we did not want to build the end-to-end tools to analyze all this stuff. But the way we did it is we just built the minimum tool that we needed just to know what was going on, but we also made sure that every single event was stored somewhere. And then over the next 6 to 9 months, we gradually worked out how to absorb those events into our day-to-day. And so, yeah, definitely glad we caught it all.
Yeah, because I think the true value sits in history. And because at a certain moment you think about something, you're like, damn, I don't know, I don't have the previous data, I don't have the historical data. And most of the time, it's the historical data where true value sets.
I think where it can paralyze a startup is if you try and make use of it all the time and sort of do it all properly. Right, and I think that's where people come unstuck, where they go, oh, I want to capture every bit of data and I want to make sure it's all perfect and I can use it, I can access it, and nobody's got time for that if you're like 4 people here.
Yeah, absolutely.
You can always take 5 minutes to start using tools that will be the same tools you use when you're big. That's what I've found, is that you're able, because whatever, if you look at Amazon's suite of tools, every single one of those is irrelevant to an enterprise context as it is to a startup. So you can take a little bit of research and actually start.
A nice example we can do is Kinesis streams. You just pump all your events in a Kinesis stream. You then use data host to actually load it into an S3 bucket. From a storage point of view, not expensive. You have the data to analyze later on. It's just simple. It's half an hour work to set it up.
Great, excellent. Actually, I have a question for you. Talking about small teams, and you were mentioning that running a small team. This is you. It was hard, and it takes a lot of time. And why do it? Is it why not get a regular job and do something else? Sorry.
Yeah, no, it is something I talked about, and somebody asked me earlier this, and I think the 2-part answer is, one, you gain a lot, or I feel like I gain a lot in terms of autonomy, ownership, creative control, setting my own destiny. That's sort of why I'm in it, and it feels like whatever you do in anything, there's always going to be trade-offs, and I think starting your own product business, there's certain trade-offs. I'm sure there's a way to do it without causing great stress in one's life, but it didn't happen for me. But to me, that feels like there's trade-offs, and there would be different trade-offs to make getting a regular job. I think it's just about creating a balance, and I certainly hope that it won't be as highly stressful as it is, or at least the stress levels, the touch points of the stress will be more balanced. Maybe they will, maybe they won't. But I think it's about balancing trade-offs in exchange for goals that I value as important, and ultimately having creative control and having ownership over decision making, being responsible for my own future, not letting any other entity dictate what I want, what the way my business goes, or what my integrity levels are. I think that those goals fulfill me, and that's kind of what pushes me through the really stressful days.
Is this something that you guys agree with as well? I mean, you also started your own.
Completely agree with that. I think the reason I wanted to start a company was I wanted to build something that was bigger than myself. There's only so far you can go as one person, and the opportunity to build something with other people that teaches you something that expands upon what you're capable of as an individual, for me was just an opportunity that you can turn down. Really excited me.
I'm not with a regular job. I don't see it as a regular job because actually there are a lot of huge opportunities. It's about how do you position yourself within the company, how do you challenge status quo, and do it on a regular basis or daily basis. And that actually start pushing the company forward, start influencing with the right stakeholders. And it's actually quite interesting how much you can do within a big company now. So in that way, I see myself as an entrepreneur within a bigger organization.
Yeah, I think the flip side of that question is like there is the trade-off, right? And most regular jobs are you do trade off that. But I think as an employer, that's the opportunity, right? To create the environment. You're growing and you're going through a growth phase. Create the environment where the entrepreneurial people can scratch that itch in your organisation. And I think that it's hard to do, but it's possible.
Yeah, it's a great way of looking at it.
Anybody have a question? Yeah?
Yeah, I've got a question for Anthony. So, of course, I worked with you on this confidence framework. It was amazing coming together. But in the break, I was talking to a couple of people, and one of the questions that came up was how it could be applied to a product that was already live. How it could be used to improve a product that was being used at the moment. I explained it as well as I could, but I'm sure you can explain it better than the whole audience.
You're welcome to answer the question.
No, you go for it.
So, for a product that's already live, really, there's kind of a couple of different ways that I imagine this could take place. One of them would be to look at what you've got in your stories or your epics and say, these are the things that we have in production. Let's re-look at these in terms of confidence. Let's make sure we tested and validated each piece of this and say, where does this fit into our confidence framework? The other way to do it would be to test and then retroactively take the pieces back out, I think, to work it into that confidence framework and say, these are the pieces we saw that were failing and that weren't hitting that threshold for confidence, and put that back into your product board. Of course, if you've got a roadmap, you can already just apply this. It's just about understanding where it is you want to get to and being able to retroactively say, this is how confident we are we're actually making the difference in the right way for this audience and for this set of users. Now, there's obviously a balance here because, sure, some things aren't particularly tangible. Some things aren't necessarily observable. Some things do have to come from something, like a great game idea, for example. It's very difficult to test that a market's necessarily going to pick that up. You can be confident within the team necessarily that that's actually going to take off and create value. But you're welcome to disagree with me. Yeah. If you have a solution for this, I would love to hear it. But sometimes there is a level of, we think this is going to make a huge difference. And actually being able to put that into the confidence framework has a slightly different context. It's being able to say, as a team, do we agree that this is going to make that difference? And do we think we've done enough to be able to make that difference as we move through those confidence phases? Does that make sense, or is that a really...
Indeed.
Okay.
We do something similar. We haven't articulated or codified it as eloquently as you guys, but it's an idea that for a game in development, there's 3 or 5 or 6 things they're trying to do. They're the hard problems to solve. It's got to be, the multiplayer's got to stand up on under 300 milliseconds, more latency on 3D networks, for example, or we're through to, this thing has to be marketable. Each game team sort of has their own, in development, their own things they're trying to solve, and each week they'll rate themselves at how confident they are, scale 1 to 5, that they can solve it, right? And so it's more like looking forward. Do we think, the things we've done this week, do they make it more likely or less likely that we're going to solve it? And so we run that process similar to that in dev. The way I would think about it in live, we don't do it in live. The way I would think about it is everything for us is an opportunity cost. Like if you're not making the next $1 billion game, you better be paying the bills for someone who is, or think about what you're doing, right? And so maybe there's a 6 months into the life of a game, maybe there's a series of questions you can ask. Like, the things we're working on are going to make this game, twice as big in a year's time, or solve the business problem that the game being live services. And I think it can apply to either features and stories, or even those sort of high-level business objectives as well.
If I can pick up that, I think there's actually a lot of value in doing with existing products. Because how many features do you actually have which have no value, and where we haven't looked at the confidence level of what is the value for our customers? And every line of code is one that you have to maintain. It's one which is additional risk of failure, etc. So I think doing that retrospective and start looking at your features and seeing what's your confidence level on that one might actually be a nice way of stripping down the product to the core value again.
Yeah. I think for me, one of the big parts of it is just getting the team to focus on understanding together where they are as a group. And I think that's the core thing that you were pointing out in your process as well, is that where do we currently stand? What do we not understand? And let's be very honest about that. And then let's use that honesty to propel us forward rather than having an excuse for a reason we haven't delivered. And I think that's quite a sort of, like an honest sort of integral shift to being in pursuit of product rather than in pursuit of just delivery. That's where I think it sits.
Okay. I have one question from Twitter actually. Somebody's asking, and it's to you again. Asking, so you went through a couple of things when you presented a product, but they seem to think that you missed out why. Why should somebody use your product?
Why should somebody use... Sorry, microphone died.
Okay.
Why should somebody use Ti.To?
Yeah.
Well, we don't have a really satisfactory answer at the moment. But just loosely in my mind, it's like the same question would come up as in, why would you use Stripe over PayPal? PayPal ostensibly does everything that Stripe does, but one might argue that it does it in a less elegant way. So that's how we're articulating it at the moment. I think that this kind of group would get that. I have mentioned that to some people, and they just gave me a really blank stare, and then I was like, I got nothing. So we're focused on customer experience primarily, and we think that what we're building is heading toward a really fantastic customer experience, and then internally we want to believe that we're building the best checkouts for tech events in the world.
Excellent. I think, well, that's fair enough. Good reason why.
I sort of see you guys as Stripe for tickets, because I think the way that Stripe did their mobile payments UI was a big game changer in that market, and you guys have done the same from experiential for the ticket processing.
We're not Stripe, but we are Irish. But no, Stripe is the huge hero. Stripe is amazing.
They are great.
Does anybody have a good question?
I guess it follows the question before that, but for the gaming industry. So basically, I see what sort of drives you to create games to be on top of that list, but what's the value your games give, and how do you define that value, and why you're doing a certain game, and also like how do you see the gaming industry for the future? Maybe like games like Monument Valley when there's business ships and everything outside.
Yeah, I think there's two types of people making games. There's people who make it as a pure form of self-expression, and it's the equivalent in the movie industry of the art house film, right? You don't care, sometimes you don't even want to make money, you just want to express something. And then there's people who make games because they want to entertain, they want to have a connection with millions of people, they want to get off the plane and someone recognizes, see someone playing their game. And I think we're definitely in the latter camp, which is the more commercial camp, and I think that's why we do it. Is it's just fun to do. I guess most of the people that work at my company, they just really love playing games. They can't imagine, they grew up not really imagining that they could have a job doing something they love to do, and so that's why they're doing it, right? There's some that do it for the technical challenge, and the rest of the core group of people they just do it because they love making games. And some of them are more of the indie bent, but they want to pay the bills, and so they're working for a company that's more commercial. But the common theme is love playing games, want to make it, and they really like the idea of doing stuff and seeing people, consuming their product. I think that's why we're all product people, right? But the games is kind of on steroids because you can keep doing it, you keep changing. The games are a living, breathing thing that you can update all the time, so that the connection's much closer than a lot of other products. As for the broader industry, I think every 5 years or so, there's been a big platform shift. There's moved from consoles, and then there's a lot of buzz on Facebook gaming and browser gaming, and then mobile came along and disrupted that. And so I think it's a very young industry, it's a very changing industry, and so I don't know what the next big platform is, whether VR or AR stuff is just around the corner. It seems unlikely to me, so I think for the next 5 years or so, mobile is going to be the dominant gaming platform in terms of reach, numbers of people, right? I think you're going to have really great experiences. I'm going to really love the console VR experiences as a gamer, but it's going to be kind of a smaller audience. So I think there's a lot of room, big mass casual games on mobile, and every 6 months the industry changes quite a bit, so that's what makes it exciting. Did I answer your question?
Yeah.
For Anthony, how do you make sure that you learn the right stuff? For example, you can start learning things and then go over and build your confidence, but in the end, actually you're not focusing on the right thing. So how do you make sure you get that basic thing right before you go into...
It's a really good question. And the other annoying question that's difficult to answer is what is good enough? Right? It's a very, very difficult thing to define. And honestly, a lot of that comes through experience. It's understanding how to measure the right thing, understanding what your market looks like, what the future of your market's going to look like. It's the strategy piece, really. That how do we want to make a difference in this space? What have we seen that's worked effectively in other markets? What have we seen that's transitioned for people's experience? Like, we just talked a little bit about VR and AR as concepts. They've been hugely invested in by investors. Like, the traction's not there. Very few people actually own VR and AR headsets. And sure, you could go and create yourself a VR game right now, but your audience is tiny. It's currently all this money's being pumped into it by Sony. There's AR kit on iOS devices now. Was there a standout product that was launched for AR? No. So you need to understand a lot about the market. You need to understand a lot about the audience, and you need to be very clever about how you weave that thread through them to understand what that product is that you need to create to make that difference there and how to build traction. And a lot of that is very difficult to test, and it's quite hard to test the momentum on a lot of those things. But honestly, just learn. Read as many books as you can on product success, failure, trials and tribulations, and I think that's why we set up this event, right?
Yes.
Come to this event. I'm sorry that's a really vague answer. Was there an answer you were expecting that I could be more defined on?
Throwing the questions back to the audience?
Yeah, if you'd like to have a go at answering the question, by all means.
Maybe, yeah. What about weaving in users into the design process?
Okay.
A bit more, because I kind of miss that in kind of the whole thing of this evening, basically.
Yeah.
Like, I'm sure everybody does it, but it was not really touched upon.
Sure.
So maybe that could be a follow-up on that, I don't know.
So the way that I see it is that testing usability is very easy. It's very easy to observe when somebody's able to use something and use it effectively and achieve a particular goal. But testing traction can be quite complicated, and you need to do that over a longer period of time to understand it. One of the things I would suggest you do that's really helped us with this problem is that instead of finding users that you want to test with that are just users that are testing usability, find users who actually need your product and test it with them. So make sure that...
Is that a given?
Not always, no, you'd be surprised. So, testing somebody to go through a user flow, for example. Okay, say for example you wanted to, let me think, build let's take Monzo, right? You want to build a new bank. Imagine that only 2% of people in the world actually had bank accounts. Finding those people suddenly becomes quite difficult. But it's very easy to take somebody through that flow. But you want to take somebody through that flow who you know is going to want to be a customer at the end of it. And then understanding through conversation at the end of knowing that that customer needs that product and that tool is much, much more informative. And ideally, then get them to test and use your product over a period of time. Understand their experience. Keep very close tabs on how people are getting along with the product on a much longer term than just that initial testing piece. The reason we continue to do this cycle is not because we understand at the point that we've done it once, the build, measure, learn piece, is that it's continuous throughout the product. We might learn something later on within a story or a narrative that we realise, okay, this worked great for people just getting onboarded, but it didn't work over a longer period of time. And we need to take that story, we need to move it back into low confidence and say, we need to look at this again, this isn't working right. I think we've got a longer piece actually for the confidence framework, which Hannah's been working on, which talks about products not as an idea of done. You don't take a task and put it through to completion in the product and say, yeah, we're finished, this is complete. We've done this works. Because you always have to reevaluate everything. You always have to look at it, keep testing it, test the flow, test the market, test the understanding of how many people are continuing to gain traction within this particular product. Where's the fall off, as Pascal pointed out. And this is where the data piece comes in, which he's been bringing up. And there'll be shifts in the market that are going to change how effective your product is. You need to be okay with bringing those tasks back to the beginning and say, we really need to rethink these. And we need to constantly evolve them. And a product is a robber, so it's never finished. A medium as a medium, it's not final. We're not creating paintings, we're not creating, art or something that's a film that goes into a store and you buy off a shelf. It's never the same. Your app will update every day. And we have to keep evolving the products in that sense to understand and continuously look at how our users are experiencing them to get to that point. And yeah, judging traction is very hard.
I can sense that there's a conversation that could be continued afterwards. There's a lot. I see you looking not 100% satisfied, which is awesome, because that means you got more to talk about. We got time for one last question at the back there.
It kind of drives out the question about major changes to products, because you all mentioned something that might be a game changer, like we might move to progressive web apps, which may mean you actually redesign how you do something architecturally, or a change of operating system, which means you fundamentally have to make a big change. Have you got any advice about how you deal with major upgrades of a product, when everything we've talked about tonight has been about continuous improvement, continuous learning, and something else to make it sort of cliff edge?
Is that a question to me?
To anyone who wants to take it, I think, because everyone's perhaps some less so with games, I don't know, because they have a shorter line. But certainly to the rest of you, you may be facing that kind of major upgrade in the future.
Yeah, I think we talk from an enterprise perspective, and we've tried to do those big rewrites of certain platforms and products, and actually that fully got a full value out of it. And I think the key is to start isolating small bits and evolve them, and still use it as a process of learning, because you think this is a new target, but actually on the way getting to that target, the target might change because the world around you changes. So I'm not a big fan of doing big rewrites, and I feel myself in them more than once and learn from that. So I think it's all about a transition, and how do you actually do your transition in a fairly safe way, and start taking small bits away and transform into what you think the next step is. That would be my advice there.
I totally agree. I think my favourite story around this question is when Microsoft nearly died. So Microsoft obviously delivered Windows XP, which ended up on pretty much every computer, pretty much in the world, other than Apple users, which I was one, and obviously I was very amused that everyone else was using Windows at the time. But they didn't change it. It stayed the same. They continuously said, we're going to release Longhorn, we're going to release Longhorn. And years and years and years went past. And they got to the point where they're like, okay, look, here's the latest version of Windows, it's called Windows Vista. And they changed almost everything. The experience was different, it looked different, it functioned fundamentally differently. The control panels were all really weird and odd. And it was a great example of where they hadn't built a cadence of change. They hadn't built people's expectations to want and understand change within that product. And if you look at how Apple has always delivered product, Apple always do, I'm sorry to, as you can tell, I'm a little bit of a fanboy of Apple, so, but...
We're not bugging.
Yeah, okay, good. So they've always delivered product change. Every single year there is a big, not a big change, but a shift in their product. Every few months, every app gets updated. And some of the best apps that you use on a day-to-day basis will get updated. Look at Facebook. Like, I open Facebook, it's different from when Hannah opens Facebook. They're completely different apps because it's constantly evolving and changing. And what it does is in the user's mind, it changes that expectation of how they should experience change. So it goes from one of being rejection, when it's a huge change, to being one of acceptance when it's incremental change. And you become used to it, you become okay with that, and you can welcome it. Like the impassioned Apple users always welcomed the next thing that would come out.
Apple also provided probably the world's greatest counterexample to that,
Yes.
which was OS 10. 10.1.
I thought you were on my side here.
No, but it's. I agree. I mean, I think iterative design is really important, but I think that everybody secretly loves a fucking huge new launch and a new product. Everybody does love that, and that's what the big criticism against Apple at the moment is, that they're not doing a fundamental launch of the new lines of things. But that's a misunderstanding of where Apple needs to go.
Yeah.
But I've done 2 big rewrites, and the first one was a phenomenal success, and it was transitioning from browser-based to, it wasn't progressive, but it was a responsive design in the admin, and it required a complete rethink of how the CSS and the HTML was structured. And so I was like, if we're restructuring all that, I'm going to shift everything to Rails 4, which was the latest Rails at the time. And it took from March 24th, 2014 to March 23rd, 2015. And it was hellish to maintain 2 systems side by side, but we just made a plan, and we ran both systems side by side for 6 or 8 months. We started transitioning a few customers early. We made sure it was they both were completely compatible. We made sure the back end was compatible with both back ends were compatible with the front end, and it was a really, really big success. So much so that we're doing it again. The degree of leap isn't huge, but I think there's a lot to be said for making big changes alongside your iterative approach, because it builds morale. But you don't want to be Duke Nukem forever. So
If you look at the experience layer and your process layer and then your more backend, you're not going to rewrite the full stack in one go, because you kept a few components stable, and that was your experience layer, which were your APIs. And then you start testing with maybe different front-end frameworks to get that different experience. But what I experienced is that changing all 3 components at the same time is, in my opinion, a good formula for disaster.
Sounds like we can't really agree on that, so I think that's a great place to stop. So let's continue this conversation.